The cold, silvery light of the Void's Edge station cast long, distorted shadows across the deserted corridors. A low, persistent hum, a symphony of distant machinery and life support systems, permeated the vast emptiness, a constant reminder of humanity's tenuous grasp on the cosmos. Within this sprawling metallic leviathan, a solitary figure moved with practiced grace, his worn cleaning cart a silent companion. Each swipe of his mop, each polish of a gleaming surface, seemed to echo the unspoken narrative of countless forgotten hours. The stark contrast between the infinite grandeur of space outside the panoramic viewports and the mundane, repetitive nature of his task was a paradox Cale had long since ceased to actively ponder, though its presence remained a subtle undercurrent in his quiet existence. Meet Cale. He was, to all intents and purposes, the station janitor. On a multi-species research outpost, teeming with brilliant minds from a dozen advanced civilizations, Cale was often overlooked, a ghost in the gleaming hallways. He was humanity's humble representative, seen by many as the lowest rung on the intricate ladder of stellar society. His naturally quiet demeanor, his preference for observation over discourse, was frequently misinterpreted as a lack of intellect, a simple-mindedness that suited his menial tasks. But Cale found a unique solace in the forgotten corners of the station, in the rhythmic hum of its machinery, in the subtle vibrations that resonated through its metallic bones. He was a collector of sounds, a silent archivist of ambient noise, finding patterns and melodies where others heard only static. His past was not one of grand heroics or academic accolades, but a quiet life, marked by an unusual sensitivity to sound and an uncanny ability for subtle, often unnoticed, observation. A sudden, jarring shift in the station's usual rhythmic pulse heralded a new, critical arrival. Word spread through the crew like wildfire. A recently discovered alien species, the Lumina, had brought their queen to the Void's Edge. Her condition was dire. She lay in a deep, inexplicable coma, her vibrant life force slowly ebbing away. Advanced alien medical technology, capable of mending wounds that would vaporize a human, had failed to even diagnose her affliction. The air thickened with an almost palpable tension. Even the most stoic of the station's elite scientists, normally unflappable in the face of cosmic mysteries, showed increasing signs of stress. Frustrated whispers in unfamiliar tongues now punctuated the usual hum, and the frantic scurry of alien medical teams became a constant sight, turning the meticulously maintained medical bay into a vortex of anxiety and desperation. The fate of an entire species, perhaps even interstellar peace, seemed to hang precariously in the balance, a weighty burden for a janitor to carry, even one who moved through the shadows. Please consider subscribing to the channel for more epic tales. The Lumina Queen's predicament transcended mere medical curiosity. It had rapidly escalated into a profound interstellar incident. Her species, revered across the galaxy for their unique, intricate psionic abilities and their ethereal beauty, found themselves in unprecedented distress. The comatose state of their sovereign sent ripples of concern through countless star systems. Delegations from myriad advanced civilizations, each boasting medical technologies that bordered on the miraculous, converged upon the Void's Edge, transforming the research station into an impromptu galactic hospital. Yet, despite their collective intellectual might and astonishing array of tools, a cure remained elusive, the nature of her deep coma stubbornly defying all understanding. Each passing cycle saw less hope, more desperation. Hovering over this desperate situation like a predatory shade was the immense pressure exerted by the Interstellar Council, an organization notorious for its rigid protocols and uncompromising demands. The Queen's failing health threatened not only her species but the delicate web of alliances and treaties she had painstakingly woven over centuries. Adding another layer of complexity, and indeed, a personal obstacle for Cale, was Dr. Valerius, the lead alien xenolinguist. Valerius, a being of sharp intellect and even sharper, multifaceted eyes, initially perceived Cale as little more than an inconvenient shadow, an invisible entity whose presence was barely registered, let alone considered significant. Dr. Valerius, burdened by the immense responsibility and political ramifications of the Queen's condition, inadvertently reinforced Cale's deep-seated invisibility, viewing him as just another anonymous cog in the station's maintenance machinery. The station's medical bay hummed with increasingly frantic energy. High-tech diagnostics, sleek and humming with alien power, performed incessant scans, their holographic readouts painting increasingly grim pictures. Psionic probes, delicate instruments designed to interface with the very fabric of thought and will, were deployed with meticulous care, their findings consistently bewildering. Every known exotic medicine, from bioluminescent serums to crystalline resonance therapies, was administered, each with the confident expectation of a breakthrough, only to yield precisely nothing. The Queen's life signs continued their slow, agonizing decline. The once confident scientists, multi-limbed and multi-eyed, now moved with a growing sense of frustration, their debates becoming sharper, their exhaustion more apparent. Cale, observing these ceaseless failures from his habitual vantage point in the periphery, his presence largely unseen and unequivocally unheard, processed much more than he let on. As he quietly moved through the bustling medical wing, emptying waste receptacles and polishing sterile surfaces, his keen, almost preternatural sensitivity to sound picked up subtle anomalies. He heard the barely perceptible shifts in the Queen's bioreadouts through the ambient hum, the peculiar sonic textures that accompanied the repeated failures of the alien tech. He saw the flicker of desperation in the eyes of beings who had faced down black holes and harnessed stellar energies, now utterly baffled by a single, frail life. He understood, with a quiet certainty that surprised even himself, that their advanced methods were missing something fundamental, something beyond their intricate instruments and complex theories. The constant, despairing murmurs of the medical team, the growing silence from the Lumina delegates, all painted a picture of a crisis deepening, a royal life flickering towards an inevitable end, while the janitor, the quiet human, continued his rounds, gathering not just refuse, but information, with every unnoticed sweep of his hand. As the advanced medical teams grew increasingly frantic, Cale, almost instinctively, began to notice patterns they entirely disregarded. In his daily, meticulous rounds, which often brought him to the periphery of the Queen's chamber, he started to perceive subtle, almost imperceptible sonic anomalies within the ambient hum. These weren't the usual mechanical whirs or the soft hiss of life support, but rather faint, fluctuating frequencies that seemed to resonate just beneath the threshold of normal hearing. To the highly trained alien ears of the medical staff, these were dismissed as mere background noise, an unavoidable byproduct of a complex station environment. Yet Cale, with his unique auditory sensitivity, instinctively linked these peculiar sonic patterns to the flickering fluctuations in the Queen's life signs, an observation that even the station's hyper-advanced sensors picked up but could not interpret beyond mere data points. The machines meticulously recorded the erratic dips and surges, but offered no explanation for their origin or meaning. Driven by an unspoken intuition, Cale began to use his simple, modified cleaning tools in ways never intended. His sonic scrubber, typically used for dislodging stubborn grime from difficult crevices, possessed a finely tuned transducer. He carefully adjusted its frequency range, amplifying these faint, dissonant sounds, allowing him to perceive them with startling clarity. He discovered that the sicker the Queen appeared on the diagnostic readouts, the more chaotic and jarring these subtle frequencies became, a discordant symphony of suffering. It was as if her very essence was broadcasting a warped, damaged signal, a cry for harmony in a universe of dissonance. This hidden layer of sonic information, completely invisible to the galaxy's most brilliant minds and their cutting-edge technology, was becoming profoundly clear to the station's humble janitor. A glimmer of hope, though entirely unseen and unacknowledged by anyone else, began to spark within Cale. He began to experiment in isolated, seldom used areas of the station, often late at night when his rounds wound down. Utilizing discarded communication relays, forgotten audio processors from a decommissioned research lab, and even the resonant properties of various metallic surfaces, he tried to replicate and then, crucially, to counter the dissonant frequencies he detected emanating from the Queen's chamber. He wasn't entirely sure what he was doing, but his hands moved with an innate understanding, a deep-seated connection to rhythm and vibration that felt almost primal. He would spend hours, painstakingly adjusting a dial, tapping a piece of metal, or humming a particular note, searching for the perfect counter-frequency, a sonic bomb to mend the Queen's fractured song. Each successful replication, however small, fueled his quiet determination, transforming his clandestine experiments into a silent, desperate quest. Meanwhile, the situation in the medical bay continued its precipitous decline. The medical team, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair, made a grave announcement. The Queen's condition had taken another critical turn for the worse. Her unique biological rhythms were faltering rapidly, giving her only days, perhaps even mere hours, to live. The news sent a wave of stark, icy panic through the station. Whispers escalated into agitated discussions, and the air of professional scientific detachment completely evaporated, replaced by a palpable sense of impending doom. Dignitaries from various species, who had remained stoically optimistic, now openly displayed their distress. The Lumina delegates, their expressions of grief profound and heart-wrenching, began to prepare for the inevitable, their psionic fields radiating an almost overwhelming sorrow that permeated the entire station. The weight of galactic expectation, the fragile balance of interstellar peace, and the preciousness of a unique life all converged, making the final days of the Lumina Queen a period of intense, unbearable desperation for everyone aboard the Void's Edge, except perhaps for the janitor, who now held a fragile, untested hope in his quiet, observant hands. Cale's internal clock, usually steady and rhythmic like the pulse of the station itself, now ticked with a frantic, growing urgency. He intensified his secret sonic experiments, the hum of discarded equipment in his makeshift workstation becoming a constant companion during the long, solitary hours of his night shifts. This wasn't merely a scientific pursuit for him. It was an innate calling, a deep-seated understanding of sound and rhythm that had been woven into the very fabric of his being since childhood. He recalled vivid memories of sitting by his grandmother's archaic record player, his small fingers tracing the grooves of vinyl, enchanted by the vibrations, by the way certain notes resonated deep within his bones. He remembered the unusual sensitivity of his hearing, how the subtle shifts in a melody could evoke profound emotions, how a sudden dissonance could physically jar him. This unique connection to the unseen world of sound was not a skill he had learned, it was a part of who he was. He knew he had to try something, anything, even if it meant directly contravening station protocol, even if it meant risking his job, his freedom, perhaps even his life. The image of the fading queen, her life signal a broken, discordant melody in his mind's ear, spurred him on. The advanced alien doctors, with all their sophisticated diagnostics, heard only static. Cale heard a song desperately in need of mending. One late-night cleaning shift, as the station drifted into its deepest quietude, Cale found himself in the deserted xenolinguistics lab, polishing the already gleaming consoles. His rhythmic movements were suddenly interrupted by the sound of muffled cursing, a distinctly non-human lament. Rounding a corner, he accidentally encountered Dr. Valerius, the lead xenolinguist, slumped against a data console, his multi-jointed arms pressing against his tired eyes. Strewn across the floor, having slipped from his grasp, were several crucial data pads, their holographic screens flickering with complex alien script and intricate diagrams. Valerius, usually so composed and austere, looked utterly drained, a stark testament to the relentless pressure he was under. Cale, without a word, silently knelt and began to gather the scattered data pads. His movements were swift, efficient, and utterly devoid of judgment. He carefully stacked them, aligning the flickering screens, and then, with a soft, almost imperceptible gesture, placed them gently back into Valerius's weary hands. For a brief, unguarded moment, Valerius's multifaceted eyes, usually sharp and analytical, softened. He looked not at the janitor, the invisible man, but at a fellow being offering silent, unasked for assistance. He saw the quiet efficiency, the unexpected empathy in Cale's simple act, a fleeting glimpse of humanity in the sterile, alien environment. Valerius offered a brief, guttural sound of thanks, a rare acknowledgement that lingered in the air long after Cale had quietly resumed his cleaning, blending back into the shadows. Back in the medical bay, the official reports from the attending physicians grew increasingly dire. The prognosis was grim, stark, and uncompromising. All conventional and unconventional treatments had been exhausted. Every possible avenue explored, every exotic remedy tried, had failed. The Lumina Queen's unique physiology was simply incapable of responding, or perhaps, as Valerius had privately mused, they simply hadn't found the right key. The constant, soft chime of critical alerts from the medical monitors became a mournful dirge, each tone a hammer blow against the dwindling hope. Then, a new arrival further amplified the despondency. The Lumina Empress, the Queen's closest advisor and a figure of immense authority within her species, materialized within the station. Her entrance was silent, her entourage minimal, but her aura of profound despair was almost physically palpable. Her face, a mosaic of ethereal light and shadow, was etched with an anguish so deep it seemed to absorb all the light in the room. She moved with a slow, deliberate grace, her every action a testament to the heavy burden she carried. Her presence, while commanding, was a stark symbol of the Queen's fading hope, a final, poignant acknowledgement that the end was tragically, inevitably near. Cale, observing from his silent post, felt the Empress's grief like a dissonant chord, knowing that his window of opportunity, if it existed at all, was rapidly narrowing to a mere sliver. The mournful dirge of the medical monitors, the palpable despair emanating from the Lumina Empress, acted as a final, inescapable catalyst for Cale. He knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his bones, that time had not merely narrowed, it had all but run out. The advanced alien doctors, with their sophisticated equipment and their exhaustive treatments, had yielded only failure. It was his turn. Driven by a reckless, unyielding conviction, Cale knew he had to act, and he had to act now. His plan, born from weeks of clandestine sonic experimentation, was simple yet audacious. He would introduce his unique, harmonizing frequency directly into the Queen's chamber, a sonic countermeasure to the discordant noise he perceived to be her ailment. He moved with a quiet precision born of desperation, making his way to his personal locker, a small, hidden alcove he had adapted over the years. From its depths, he retrieved a discarded audio transducer, a relic from a long-defunct communication array. With nimble fingers and an intuitive understanding of its inner workings, he began the final modifications. He bypassed safety protocols, rewired internal conduits, and calibrated its output to generate the precise frequency he had painstakingly developed. The device, now a crude but potent instrument, was a testament to his ingenuity and his solitary quest. It was a gamble, a last resort. But Cale felt an unshakable belief in the power of sound, a belief that transcended the sterile logic of alien medicine. Yet, implementing his plan was far from straightforward. The Queen's chamber, a hub of intense medical activity, was under constant, stringent security. Bypassing these systems presented a significant practical challenge. Even if he could slip past the biological and technological sentinels, he needed a moment when the chamber was unattended, a brief window of opportunity to deploy his device without immediate detection. Furthermore, he needed to modify the transducer without drawing any attention to himself or his unusual activities. His years as a janitor, however, had inadvertently prepared him for this very moment. He possessed an intimate knowledge of the station's hidden conduits, its forgotten maintenance tunnels, its rarely used access points, the unseen circulatory system of the Void's Edge. These were his hunting grounds, his secret routes, and now they would be his pathway to the Queen. He spent the next few cycles meticulously scouting, observing the shift changes of the medical teams and security personnel. He noted their patterns, their brief moments of distraction, the subtle nuances of their movements. He learned when the automated cleaning drones made their rounds, masking the sounds of his own movements. He studied the timing of the energy conduits that fed the chamber's life support, understanding when their subtle hum might provide acoustic cover. Every detail, no matter how small, was factored into his desperate calculus. He knew the station better than anyone, better than the engineers who designed it, better than the security teams who guarded it. This was his advantage, his silent weapon. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of agonizing anticipation, his chance arrived. A significant shift change coincided with a minor system diagnostic on the outer security parameters of the chamber. For a fleeting few minutes, the intense, multi-species security presence ebbed, replaced by a momentary lapse in vigilance, as one team departed and another prepared to take its place. The usual frenetic activity inside the chamber quieted as the medical personnel concluded their scheduled observations and prepared for the changeover. It was a precise, narrow window, barely long enough to execute his plan, but it was there. Cale felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp, course through his veins. He knew, with stark clarity, that this was his only shot, his solitary opportunity to bring his unique harmonic solution to the brink of the Queen's fading life. He gripped his modified transducer, its surface cool against his damp palm, and began to move, a silent shadow merging with the station's intricate machinery. Cale moved through the station's hidden passages with the practiced grace of a phantom, his steps light, his presence utterly undetectable amidst the low thrum of the bulkheads and the distant whir of ventilation systems. He was a creature of the shadows, intimately familiar with every forgotten access panel, every overlooked maintenance conduit. His path led him ever closer to the Queen's chamber, a trajectory he had mapped out countless times in his mind. The air grew perceptibly heavier as he neared his destination, thick with an unspoken tension, an almost spiritual weight of expectation and desperation. He could feel the low, resonant hum of the Queen's life support systems, a complex symphony of alien technology keeping a fading life tethered to existence. Every nerve ending in Cale's body was alive, hyper-aware of his surroundings, of the subtle shifts in thermal signatures, the faint whispers of alien languages through the thin walls, the rhythmic patrols of security. Automatons. He merged with the architecture, a living part of the station's intricate machinery, until he stood just outside the primary energy conduit that serviced the Queen's vital systems, a mere meter from her chamber wall. His heart hammered a silent, frantic rhythm against his ribs as he prepared for the moment of truth. He carefully extracted his modified transducer from within the folds of his cleaning uniform, its crude yet effective design appearing almost laughably simple compared to the advanced alien medical devices just on the other side of the wall. With meticulous, almost surgical precision, he opened a small, camouflaged access hatch on the conduit. This was a spot he had discovered years ago, a forgotten maintenance point covered by a cleverly designed illusory panel, known only to Cale. He gently, almost reverently, inserted the transducer into the conduit, aligning it perfectly with the acoustic resonance of the chamber. His goal was not to blast the chamber with sound, but to subtly, almost imperceptibly, introduce his specific frequency into the ambient sonic environment, a harmonic whisper against the pervasive dissonance. He held his breath, every muscle tense, every sensation heightened, fearing immediate detection, the sudden blare of an alarm, or, worse, the silent, crushing weight of utter failure. The gamble was immense, the stakes immeasurable. For a few agonizing moments, the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Nothing happened. The low, mournful hum of the Queen's life support continued its steady, despairing cadence. Cale's jaw clenched, a cold dread beginning to seep into his certainty. Had he miscalculated? Was his unique sensitivity, his lifetime of sonic observation, just a delusion? He strained his ears, focusing past the normal sounds of the station, listening for the subtle, discordant frequencies he had spent weeks mapping. And then, so faint it was almost imperceptible, a change. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift in the low-frequency hum of the room, a harmonic resonance where there had been only dissonance before. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic alteration, but a subtle, almost spiritual retuning. The chaotic, jagged edges of the Queen's psionic signature, which he had learned to interpret as sound, seemed to soften, to blend, to coalesce into something vaguely less abrasive. It was like a single, perfectly pitched note subtly introduced into a cacophony, not overpowering it, but beginning to gently guide it towards harmony. Cale felt a tremor of something akin to awe, a profound sense of vindication wash over him, even as the danger of his actions remained terrifyingly clear. He had placed his single, fragile seed of harmony into the heart of their advanced, failing technology, and for a fleeting moment, the universe seemed to respond. Then, a ripple, a subtle tremor that began deep within the Queen's chamber, barely registering on the multispectral readouts that pulsed with monotonous urgency. It was a flicker, a microscopic blip in the endlessly flatlining vital signs, a transient deviation from the expected steady decline. The medical monitors, designed with alien precision to report every minute biological fluctuation, registered this barely visible improvement as an anomaly. A few scientists, their eyes glued to the holographic displays, murmured about a system glitch, a transient electrical surge, or perhaps, in their advanced state of exhaustion and desperation, a momentary illusion born of their own fervent hopes. They dismissed it, filing the data point away as an unexplainable error, choosing to believe in the predictability of their instruments rather than the unexpected. Cale, observing from his concealed vantage point, felt a profound, complex mixture of relief and terror. The relief was a warm, spreading sensation, confirming that his intervention had indeed had an effect, that his intuition had not betrayed him. But the terror was a colder, sharper current, slicing through his momentary triumph. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he had just interfered with a high-stakes, interstellar medical operation. If caught, the consequences would be severe, likely imprisonment, perhaps even worse. His humble status as a janitor would offer no protection from the wrath of desperate alien dignitaries and frustrated scientists. The thought of the intricate legal frameworks, the diplomatic protocols he had undoubtedly shattered with his simple device, made his stomach clench. He had stepped far outside his designated role, and the universe, with its myriad laws and customs, would not take kindly to such transgressions. He pressed himself further into the shadows, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against the steady hum of his transducer. The faint, almost dismissed blip in the Queen's vitals, though minuscule, did not entirely vanish from the station's hypersensitive sensor network. Like a stone dropped into calm water, it created tiny, concentric ripples of confused excitement among a few of the more junior medical staff and the automated diagnostic systems. "Did you see that?" one young xenobiologist whispered, pointing a slender, three-fingered hand at a fluctuating waveform. "A momentary uptick in neural activity." Another, a seasoned medical technician, scoffed, attributing it to sensor noise, an unavoidable byproduct of advanced psionic dampeners. Yet, the observation remained, a stubborn, unexplained data point that refused to be completely written off. Within the sterile confines of the primary medical bay, the lead scientists, still largely absorbed in their own theories and advanced diagnostic protocols, began to re-examine their data, though without any real urgency. The Queen's condition was, after all, still critically stable, meaning she was still dying. But the persistent, if minor, anomaly in the life signs prompted a few to rerun their analysis, looking for an explanation. Perhaps a new micronutrient infusion finally showing a delayed effect? One suggested, cycling through complex biochemical readouts. Or a fluctuation in atmospheric pressure affecting the psionic field? Another mused, adjusting her multi-lensed optical implants. They scoured their own intricate data, searching for an internal cause, some overlooked variable within their meticulously controlled environment. They were looking for complex, scientific explanations for a cause that fit within their vast, established paradigms of interstellar medicine. The idea that a simple, homemade device, wielded by an unseen, untrained human janitor, could be responsible was so far outside their comprehension, so utterly alien to their advanced understanding of the universe, that it did not even register as a possibility. Their advanced instruments, while detecting the faint echo of Cale's harmonic frequency, interpreted it as an unknown environmental contaminant, a background noise that needed to be filtered out, rather than a deliberate, targeted intervention. Cale remained a ghost, his actions attributed to the unpredictable vagaries of a complex system, rather than the quiet, desperate hope of a single, overlooked human being. He remained hidden, his unique connection to the suffering Queen still a profound secret, known only to himself and the subtle, humming pulse of his hidden transducer. Dr. Valerius, his multifaceted eyes narrowed in intense concentration, leaned closer to the primary diagnostic console. He meticulously reviewed the latest diagnostic readouts, his long, slender digits dancing across the holographic interface. The minute improvement in the Queen's vital signs, dismissed by others as statistical noise or a transient anomaly, had snagged his attention like a burr on fine fabric. He was a scientist of data, of precise observation, and even the smallest deviation from the expected trajectory demanded his full scrutiny. He scrolled through layers of complex biofeedback, neuropatterns, and ambient energetic signatures, searching for the elusive variable that correlated with that brief, hopeful flicker. And then he found it. A persistent, new sonic signature overlaid the usual background hum of the chamber. It was subtle, almost subliminal, but undeniably present, and to Valerius's astonishment, its appearance on the wavelength analysis chart correlated precisely, down to the millisecond, with the Queen's minute yet undeniable improvement. He isolated the frequency, running it through a battery of spectral analyses. It didn't match any known medical frequency, any environmental resonance, or any intrinsic sonic emission from the station's myriad systems. It was an alien hum, an unknown variable that defied classification. Valerius felt a prickle of intellectual curiosity, a rare sensation amidst the pervasive despair. This wasn't a glitch, this was something new. This was an active, external influence. His scientific curiosity, momentarily eclipsing his despair, ignited. Valerius, a xenolinguist by trade but a polymath by necessity, launched an immediate, internal investigation. He activated the station's advanced sensor network, a grid of hypersensitive audio and energetic detectors permeating every deck and conduit. He began to trace the source of this new, anomalous frequency. His initial hypothesis, the most logical one in his highly trained scientific mind, was that it must be a previously undetected environmental contaminator. Perhaps a rogue energy emission from a malfunctioning system or a new, insidious form of sonic interference. He believed it was a threat, a new obstacle to overcome, not, as he would later discover, a clandestine cure. His advanced sensor suites triangulated the emission to a specific section of the outer chamber wall, near a rarely accessed maintenance conduit. Meanwhile, Cale, his transducer still humming softly within the conduit, heard the subtle but distinct shift in the station's background noise. He felt the minute increase in the ambient energetic field, the telltale sign that Valerius's sophisticated sensor net was becoming more active, more focused. He could almost feel the invisible tendrils of the alien diagnostic systems reaching out, probing, searching for the source of his intervention. The low-level alarms, previously ignored by the bustling medical staff, now seemed to possess a sharper edge, a more urgent tone. The occasional chirps and whistles of diagnostic programs grew more frequent, more insistent. He knew his window of opportunity was closing, and the risk of detection exponentially increasing. With a final, silent prayer to whatever benevolent forces might be listening, Cale carefully, stealthily, retrieved his modified transducer from the conduit. He moved with a renewed sense of urgency, yet still with his characteristic quiet precision. He melted back into the station's labyrinthine maintenance tunnels, using his intimate knowledge of every forgotten passage and hidden access point to make his retreat. He returned to his janitorial duties, pushing his cleaning cart with a deliberate, rhythmic scrape of his boots on the metal deck plating, hoping that his intervention, his single, desperate act of harmonic healing, would remain untraced, an enigma in the endless data streams of the void's edge. He wiped down a panel, swept a corridor, his heart still thrumming with the dual sensations of a job well done and a secret precariously held, a fragile hope nestled against the immense, crushing weight of interstellar consequence. He hoped that the new hum, the strange frequency, would be attributed to environmental factors, anything but a lowly janitor. He would simply resume his work, a ghost once more in the gleaming halls, waiting to see if his small act of rebellion had truly made a difference. Dr. Valerius, his multifaceted eyes glowing with a mixture of scientific frustration and burgeoning suspicion, stalked through the maintenance corridors, his sensor array fixed on the anomalous sonic signature. The signal, which had subtly increased in strength since its initial detection, consistently led him to the lower decks, to the very areas Kale frequented. Finally, the precise triangulation pointed him to a specific quadrant, a less traffic section where the faint, rhythmic scraping of a cleaning cart could be heard. He rounded a corner, his sensors now screaming with pinpoint accuracy, only to find Kale, diligently polishing a reinforced bulkhead, his unassuming figure stark against the sterile metallic backdrop. Valerius stopped abruptly, his posture stiffening, his multiple limbs tensing. "You," he stated, his voice a low, resonant growl, a stark contrast to his usual calm academic tone. He extended a digit, pointing it accusingly at Kale. "What have you been doing near the Queen's chamber? My sensors indicate a highly irregular energy emission originating precisely from your vicinity, correlating directly with the recent, unexplained fluctuations in her vital signs. Speak, human! Have you been tampering with the medical equipment? Are you aware of the gravity of interfering with a high-priority interstellar patient?" Kale flinched, dropping his polishing cloth. The sudden confrontation, the harshness in Valerius's usually composed voice, startled him. His quiet nature, often mistaken for meekness, made direct confrontation deeply uncomfortable. He stammered, his gaze darting between the angry alien and the floor. I wasn't tampering, sir. Not exactly. I was listening." He swallowed hard, trying to gather his thoughts, the weight of accusation pressing down on him. "I hear things. Sounds. Frequencies." He gestured vaguely towards the wall, then to his head. "The Queen's chamber. It was wrong. The sounds were wrong." Valerius tilted his multifaceted head, processing Kale's hesitant words. "Wrong? What do you mean, wrong? My instruments detected a unique, non-biological sonic signature, a deliberate imposition onto the ambient environment. You claim you were listening and heard wrong sounds? Elaborate, human." His tone remained sharp, though a flicker of something akin to incredulity began to replace the initial anger. Kale took a deep breath, forcing himself to meet Valerius's intense gaze. "The Queen, her song was broken," he explained, choosing terms he hoped Valerius's xenolinguistic background might grasp. "A dissonance. Like a beautiful melody, but with a harsh, off-key note underneath, slowly corrupting the whole. Your machines, they see the physical decline, the biosignals. But they don't hear the full song. I built a device, a transducer." He gestured to his cart, where his modified tool lay hidden beneath some rags. "To generate a counter-frequency. A harmonic. To try and put her song back in tune." He spoke of the songs he heard, the intrinsic melodies of life and matter, and how the Queen's song had been decaying, unraveling from within. It sounded absurd, even to his own ears, spoken aloud in the cold, sterile corridor. Valerius listened, his expression unreadable. His anger had definitely subsided, replaced by an almost comical disbelief. A janitor, a low-ranking human, claiming to have heard a broken song in a high-priority alien patient and then tuned it with a homemade device? It sounded like the ramblings of a madman. Yet the data from his sensors was undeniable. The anomalous frequency, the minute improvement in the Queen's vitals, these were not figments of imagination. How could this unassuming human possess an intuitive understanding that bypassed decades of advanced alien technological development? How could he perceive something that the galaxy's most sophisticated xenoscientists had completely missed? The xenolinguist's internal logic circuits whirred, attempting to reconcile the ludicrous claim with the empirical evidence. He was baffled, skeptical to his core. His entire scientific education, his advanced instrumentation, his years of studying alien biology and communication, all pointed to the impossibility of Kale's narrative. He prided himself on his ability to decipher alien complexities, yet this simple human's explanation seemed to operate on an entirely different plane of understanding, an almost mythical, poetic framework that defied conventional science. He looked at Kale, truly looked at him, not as a janitor, but as an anomaly. The evidence of the strange frequency, the elusive, non-biological signal that had begun to emanate from the Queen's chamber, was undeniable. The source was Kale. The effect, however small, was also undeniable. Valerius found himself in uncharted territory, forced to confront the limits of his own scientific paradigm, staring at a truth that was both absurd and, inexplicably, compelling. He crossed his several arms, his mind wrestling with a profound, unprecedented intellectual dilemma. Valerius, despite the inherent absurdity of Kale's claims and the deep-seated skepticism ingrained in his scientific methodology, was fundamentally driven by data. The correlation between Kale's clandestine intervention and the faint, yet measurable, improvement in the Queen's vital signs was a piece of information he could not, and would not, ignore. It challenged everything he understood, everything he had been taught, but the raw data was there, stark and undeniable. He paced for a moment, his multi-jointed limbs moving with an unusual deliberation, his mind processing a monumental decision. To dismiss Kale entirely would be to ignore empirical evidence, a betrayal of his scientific principles. To embrace Kale's wild hypothesis without further validation would be professional suicide. He stopped, turning to face Kale, his expression now unreadable. Your explanation, human, defies all known scientific principles. Valerius began, his voice still low but devoid of its previous anger. However, the data, however improbable its origin, suggests a correlation. I cannot, in good conscience, ignore it, especially given the Queen's critical state. He paused, then continued, enunciating each word with careful precision. I will allow you to demonstrate your theory. Not on the Queen directly, not yet. But you will be given access to a sound laboratory, minimal equipment, and under my direct, constant surveillance. You must prove, conclusively, that you can identify and then counteract a specific dissonant frequency. And you must do it on a smaller scale, with demonstrable, measurable results. It was a colossal gamble for Valerius, a radical departure from protocol that could cost him his career, but the fading life of the Queen, and the desperate hope of an impossible solution, compelled him. Kale's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise, then fierce determination, replacing his earlier fear. He understood the immense trust, however, reluctant, Valerius was placing in him. He nodded, a silent promise. This was his chance, his opportunity to validate not just his instincts, but the very essence of his unique perception. He found himself in a small, sterile sound lab, a stark contrast to his usual domain of cleaning supplies. The equipment provided was basic, almost rudimentary by the station's advanced standards, but Kale found a strange comfort in its simplicity. A frequency generator, an oscilloscope, a few high-fidelity speakers, and an acoustic dampening chamber, enough for his purpose. Valerius stood silently in the corner, his multifaceted eyes tracking Kale's every movement, his expression a mask of intense scrutiny. The pressure was immense, a heavy mantle of expectation that settled on Kale's shoulders. He knew that his simple intuition, his innate understanding of sonic harmony, was now being scrutinized by the cold, hard logic of alien science. Failure here would mean not only the end of his improbable mission but likely a return to his invisible life, or worse. Kale took a deep breath, pushing aside the anxiety. He closed his eyes for a moment, clearing his mind, seeking that quiet space where the world revealed its hidden melodies. He began by generating various dissonant frequencies, replicating the chaotic hums he had isolated from the Queen's chamber. The oscilloscope displayed jarring, erratic waveforms, visual representations of the auditory chaos. Then, with a focus that bordered on trance-like, he adjusted the controls of his second frequency generator, slowly, meticulously, searching for the counter-frequency. He wasn't relying on complex calculations. He was listening, feeling, aligning the sounds until a profound sense of rightness resonated within him. When he introduced his counter-frequency, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The chaotic waveforms on the oscilloscope smoothed, aligning into coherent, harmonious patterns. The grating dissonance that had filled the lab vanished, replaced by a clear, resonant hum. He varied the dissonant input, and each time, Kale found the precise harmonic counter, demonstrating a clear, measurable restoration of sonic order. He didn't just guess, he intuitively understood what was needed. Valerius watched, stunned into silence. His analytical mind, trained to observe, measure, and quantify, struggled to reconcile what he was seeing with what he knew to be possible. The human, this janitor, was not merely making random adjustments. He was demonstrating an uncanny, almost supernatural ability to identify and correct complex sonic distortions. He, Valerius, a renowned xenolinguist, couldn't have replicated this with the most advanced supercomputers. Cale's success in the lab was undeniable, a stark, irrefutable truth that shattered Valerius's skepticism and replaced it with a profound, almost bewildered awe. He had found his impossible solution, where he least expected it. With Valerius's cautious, almost reverent approval, Cale was brought back to the Queen's chamber. This time, his presence was not a stealthy infiltration, but a deliberate, if still highly secretive, act. The heavy security around the Queen remained vigilant, but now, under Valerius's personal directive, Cale was granted access, albeit under the most stringent surveillance imaginable. Advanced sensors, far more sophisticated than anything Cale had at his disposal, were arrayed to meticulously monitor every aspect of his intervention. Every frequency Cale produced, every resonance he initiated, was captured, analyzed, and cross-referenced with the Queen's rapidly fluctuating biosignatures. Yet, despite this intense scrutiny, the true nature of Cale's role and the unconventional method being employed were still kept a closely guarded secret from the majority of the frantic medical team, who continued their own desperate, conventional efforts, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding beside them. Cale stood near the Queen's inert form, his simple transducer now connected to a discrete input port that Valerius had surreptitiously activated within the chamber's environmental controls. He closed his eyes, filtering out the anxious murmurs of the medical team, the rhythmic beeping of the life support machines, and the subtle hum of the station itself. He reached deep within himself, channeling the intuitive understanding of sound that was his unique gift. With deliberate, almost meditative movements, he began to slowly introduce his refined harmonic frequency into the chamber's intricate sonic environment. It wasn't a loud sound, not a melody in the traditional sense, but a subtle, pervasive resonance, a vibrational balm designed to soothe the deep psionic dissonance that had afflicted the Queen. As Cale intensified the harmonic frequency, a profound transformation began to ripple through the chamber. The Queen's life signs, which had remained stubbornly flatlining despite the earlier flicker, now began to show a much more pronounced, steady improvement. The subtle sonic patterns in the room, which Cale had long perceived as chaotic and jarring, began to shift, becoming more organized, more melodic. The once jagged waveforms on the diagnostic displays softened, coalescing into smoother, rhythmic pulses. It was as if a hidden conductor had stepped in, bringing a chaotic orchestra back into perfect alignment. The change was undeniable even to the skeptical alien medical staff, who initially attributed it to a sudden, inexplicable remission, a miracle beyond their current comprehension. Their instruments, however, objectively measured the shift, reporting an unprecedented return to equilibrium in the Queen's psionic field, her neural activity, and even her subtle cellular regeneration indices. Unbeknownst to the frantic medical personnel and even to Valerius, who remained focused on the empirical data, another presence in the chamber was experiencing the profundity of Cale's intervention on an entirely different level. The Lumina Empress, her face still etched with deep sorrow, had remained a silent, watchful vigil by her Queen's side. Her species, deeply attuned to the subtle energies of their kind, possessed a psionic sensitivity that transcended mere physical perception. As Cale's harmonic frequency permeated the chamber, the Empress sensed a profound, almost spiritual shift in the Queen's ambient psionic field. It was not merely a physical improvement, but a return to a familiar equilibrium, a resonance that echoed deep within her own soul. The chaotic internal turmoil that had plagued her Queen, the broken song that Cale had perceived, was slowly beginning to mend. The Empress didn't understand the mechanism, couldn't articulate the scientific principles at play, but she felt it in the very core of her being. It was a familiar harmony, a comforting resonance from a place of deep, ancient wisdom. A sense of profound relief, a delicate tendril of hope, a feeling she had believed long lost, began to unfurl within her. She didn't know who or what was causing this miraculous shift, but she felt its profound positive influence. Her multifaceted eyes, which had been clouded with despair, now widened slightly, glistening with a dawning awareness. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of genuine hope for her queen's recovery, a hope that resonated not from logic or scientific explanation, but from the deep, intuitive heart of her psionically attuned species. The Empress, usually a stoic and composed figure, felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her, a quiet certainty that something extraordinary was happening, something beyond the understanding of even the most brilliant minds in the room. The subtle, yet undeniable, shift in the Queen's vital signs, coupled with the profound psionic sensation, confirmed her intuition: the tide had turned. The delicate, rhythmic hum Kale introduced continued its subtle work, weaving a harmonious tapestry around the comatose Queen. Suddenly, with a collective, almost imperceptible gasp that rippled through her ethereal body, the Lumina Queen's eyes slowly began to open. They were not merely functional optical organs, but luminous orbs, multifaceted and swirling with an inner light that spoke of universes contained within their depths. For a moment they fluttered, disoriented, adjusting to the stark reality of the medical bay after what had felt like an eternity of inner darkness. She was undeniably weak, her movements hesitant, but she was awake. The sheer, impossible reality of it hung in the air, thick with disbelief and a growing, trembling hope. The entire medical bay, moments before a scene of subdued, frantic activity, erupted in a cacophony of sound. There were shouts of shock, cries of cautious celebration, and the sudden, high-pitched whirring of diagnostic machines struggling to process the impossible influx of positive data. Scientists, who had been on the brink of despair, now rushed forward, their multi-limbed forms jostling for a better view of the miracle unfolding before them. They frantically checked readouts, reran scans, and whispered in a dozen different alien tongues, their voices a symphony of bewildered joy and scientific triumph. But amidst the chaos, a fundamental question lingered, unspoken but universally felt: how? The Queen, her luminous eyes still adjusting, attempted to speak. Her species communication was not a simple vocalization like organic beings, but a complex, multi-layered blend of psionic resonance and subtle physical vocalization, a language that flowed as much through empathic connection as through audible sound. Her first attempt was a soft, mournful cry, a sound deeply tinged with the trauma of her prolonged coma. It was a lament, a fragile expression of profound suffering that resonated not just in the air, but directly into the minds of the psionically sensitive beings present. The sound was raw, vulnerable, a broken melody that slowly began to reassemble itself into something coherent. As she cried, her psionic field, once fractured and distorted, began to bloom anew, expanding outward in soft, shimmering waves. This revitalized psionic energy, now restored to its natural, harmonious state by Kale's persistent frequency, resonated profoundly with the subtle harmonic vibrations he was still transmitting. It was a perfect, intuitive alignment, a physical manifestation of the unique connection he had forged with her through sound. The Queen, her senses still processing the vast chasm between unconsciousness and wakefulness, instinctively responded to this comforting resonance. Her multifaceted gaze, still unfocused moments before, slowly, deliberately turned. Her eyes scanned the crowded, bustling chamber, past the frantic scientists, past the relieved Lumina Empress, past the array of advanced medical technology. They settled directly on the corner where Kale stood, almost hidden in the shadows, his presence unassuming, his janitorial uniform a stark contrast to the gleaming medical equipment. He was a silent, almost invisible figure, yet her eyes, brimming now with a silent understanding, found him with an unerring accuracy. There was no conscious recognition, no analytical thought in her gaze, only an instinctual, profound acknowledgement of the source of her healing, a deep, silent gratitude that transcended language, reason, or species. It was a direct, undeniable connection, forged in the crucible of her suffering and Kale's quiet, persistent harmony. The room, for all its noise and activity, seemed to fade around them, leaving only the Queen's luminous gaze fixed on the humble human, his heart thrumming with a silent, profound awe. Dr. Valerius, his multifaceted eyes still wide with a mixture of awe and professional astonishment, stepped forward, his previous skepticism utterly annihilated by the undeniable miracle before them. To the astonishment of the assembled scientists, who had until moments ago dismissed Cale as an inconvenient shadow, Valerius raised a hand for silence. His voice, usually precise and academic, now carried an unfamiliar tremor of reverence. "My esteemed colleagues," he began, sweeping his gaze across the bewildered faces, "we have witnessed a recovery that defies all our understanding, a healing that eluded our most advanced technologies. And I must reveal the true architect of this miracle." He turned, his multi-jointed arm extending towards Cale, who stood awkwardly in the shadows, still clutching his polishing cloth. "This human," Valerius declared, the words echoing with profound irony, "this useless janitor, possessed an innate understanding of sonic harmony, a perceptive ability that utterly eluded all our advanced instrumentation and medical expertise. It was his unique frequency, his song, that coaxed our Queen back from the brink." The announcement detonated like a silent bomb in the room, sending ripples of disbelief, then dawning comprehension, through the stunned crowd. The Lumina Empress, her initial shock giving way to an overwhelming tide of relief and profound gratitude, approached Cale. Her movements were fluid, ethereal, her psionic field radiating a warmth that enveloped him. She extended a slender, glowing hand, not in a greeting, but in a gesture of profound respect, her multifaceted eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made Cale's heart pound. "Humble human," she began, her voice a soft, resonant melody that resonated directly within his mind. "We owe you a debt beyond measure. Our Queen's coma, as you so intuitively perceived, was not a physical ailment in the conventional sense. It was a profound psionic dissonance, a twisting of her deepest energetic core, what you so aptly described as a broken song of her soul." She paused, her gaze deepening. "Your unique frequency, your harmonic resonance, did not merely mend her body, it restored the very fabric of her being, retuning her essence to the natural order of the universe. You healed her soul's melody, Cale." Her gratitude was a profound, humbling experience for the unassuming human, a silent acknowledgement of a connection that transcended species and status. Cale, unaccustomed to such profound attention and praise, felt a blush creep up his neck. He shifted awkwardly, still clutching his cleaning cloth, his gaze dropping to the floor. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone present. The most advanced species in the galaxy, with their unimaginable technology and their millennia of accumulated knowledge, had been utterly baffled by an ailment that had almost claimed their divine leader. And yet the solution, the improbable key to recovery, had been found not in their gleaming labs or their sophisticated diagnostics, but in the intuitive sensitivity of a human janitor. This quiet, unassuming man, whom they had all overlooked and dismissed, had achieved what their collective brilliance could not. He was no longer invisible. The whispers and murmurs that now filled the chamber were not of confusion, but of awe, of wonder, and of a dawning realization of the extraordinary potential harbored within the most unexpected places. Cale, the useless janitor, was suddenly, irrevocably, in the spotlight, a beacon of an unexpected wisdom, his simple act of kindness and unique perception having inadvertently rewritten the rules of interstellar medicine. His unassuming presence now commanded the respect of every being in the room, a testament to the profound truth that true value often lies beyond surface appearances. News of Cale's extraordinary gift, initially a whisper within the Void's Edge station, swiftly transformed into a resounding chorus that echoed throughout the vast expanse of the galaxy. The story of the humble human janitor who had achieved what the most advanced alien medical science could not, became a potent symbol. It spoke volumes about humanity's untapped potential, a reminder that true understanding often transcended technological prowess, residing instead in profound intuition and empathy. Cale became an interstellar celebrity, a focal point for countless philosophical and scientific debates. Messages poured in from every corner of the charted cosmos, offering him prestigious positions in renowned research institutes, even diplomatic roles in newly formed interspecies alliances. He was invited to lecture at esteemed academies, to consult on medical mysteries, to simply share the secret of his gift. Yet, amidst this sudden, overwhelming acclaim, Cale remained steadfastly himself, quietly declining every offer that sought to pull him away from the simple, profound purpose he had discovered. His celebrity never truly penetrated his humble demeanor. He preferred the quiet hum of a functioning system to the clamor of public admiration. He was not driven by ambition, but by a deep-seated connection to sound and harmony. The Lumina Queen, her recovery now complete, emerged from her ordeal with a renewed vibrancy and a profound sense of gratitude. Her health was fully restored, her psionic field shimmering with an even greater complexity and beauty than before. But more remarkable than her physical recovery was the unique, deep bond that had formed between her and Cale. It was an unspoken connection, a profound resonance that transcended their vastly different biologies and cultures. She sought his presence, not out of dependence, but out of a genuine desire for the comfort and stability his unique sonic resonance provided. His quiet presence, the subtle harmonic frequencies he unconsciously emitted, profoundly soothed her, acting as a constant balm to the residual echoes of her past trauma. She found solace in his silent companionship, a mirror to her own deep, inner harmony. Their interactions were often wordless, a communion of spirits, a mutual understanding exchanged through the delicate language of sound and psionic resonance. Cale, no longer relegated to the role of a janitor, found himself embracing a new, entirely unexpected purpose. The galaxy, having witnessed his extraordinary ability, clamored for his unique insights. Yet, he chose to remain close to the Queen and her species, finding his true calling not in grand scientific endeavors or political machinations, but in a more intimate, deeply personal role. He became, informally, a harmonic consoler, for the Lumina Queen and, by extension, for her species. While he didn't possess any formal medical training, his intuitive understanding of psionic dissonance and harmonic alignment proved invaluable. He used his unique gift to maintain their psionic well-being, to detect subtle energetic imbalances before they could manifest as physical or mental distress. He would spend hours in their serene, light-filled chambers, simply listening, his presence a quiet, stabilizing force within their complex psionic ecosystem. He worked closely with Dr. Valerius, whose initial skepticism had blossomed into a fervent respect and an insatiable scientific curiosity. Valerius, now utterly convinced of the validity of Cale's intuitive approach, dedicated himself to bridging the gap between Cale's raw, empathetic understanding and rigorous scientific methodology. Together, they embarked on a journey of discovery. Valerius meticulously documented Cale's observations, developing new theoretical frameworks to explain the human's uncanny abilities. He designed advanced sensor arrays specifically tuned to detect the subtle harmonic frequencies Cale identified, translating Cale's intuitive pronouncements into quantifiable data. This collaboration, a fusion of primal human empathy and cutting-edge alien science, began to unlock entirely new understandings of psionic health, interspecies communication, and the profound, often overlooked, power of sound. Cale, the janitor, had become an accidental pioneer, leading the galaxy towards a deeper appreciation of the subtle, interconnected energies that bound all life. His quiet influence, once confined to polishing floors, now resonated through the intricate, harmonious fabric of galactic understanding. The mystery of the Lumina Queen's illness, once an impenetrable enigma that defied the collective brilliance of countless galactic civilizations, was now fully understood. Cale's intervention, born not of advanced technology but of an innate, deeply human empathy and an extraordinary auditory perception, had unlocked fundamental secrets of psionic health. This profound understanding led directly to a cascade of new scientific breakthroughs across the galaxy, revolutionizing the way various species approached mental and energetic well-being. Researchers, inspired by Cale's intuitive approach, began to explore the subtle energetic fields and harmonic resonances within biological systems, discovering new therapies and diagnostic tools that focused on restoring internal balance rather than merely treating symptoms. Kale's unlikely success not only saved the Queen but forged new diplomatic ties between species, fostering a deeper understanding that transcended mere political alliances. The Lumina, witnessing firsthand the efficacy of Kale's uniquely human gift, became vocal advocates for humanity within the Interstellar Council, raising mankind's standing and opening doors that had previously remained firmly shut. Humanity, once considered a nascent, technologically driven species, was now recognized for its unique contributions to the galactic tapestry, particularly in the realms of intuition and emotional intelligence. The story concludes with Kale, no longer the useless janitor of the Void's Edge, but a deeply respected individual, a bridge between worlds, and a quiet champion of harmony. He often found himself on the observation deck of the station, or sometimes on the Queen's personal vessel, gazing out at the endless, glittering expanse of stars. The cosmos, once a backdrop for his mundane duties, now felt like an extension of his own intricate inner world, a vast symphony of light and sound he had only begun to truly appreciate. He understood, with a profound inner peace, that sometimes the greatest wisdom and power lay not in grand displays of force or dazzling technological marvels, but in the simplest, most fundamentally human attributes: the ability to listen, to empathize, and to perceive the hidden harmonies of existence. His journey, from an overlooked cleaning technician to a galactic harmonizer, highlighted a timeless truth: true worth is often found in the most unexpected places, within the most unassuming individuals. Humanity's strength, Kale knew, lay not just in its drive for innovation or its capacity for scientific advancement, but in its unique blend of empathy, intuition, and an enduring, quiet resilience. He had proven that a single, compassionate human voice, attuned to the suffering of another, could resonate across species, heal a queen, and subtly, yet profoundly, change the destiny of a galaxy. His legacy wasn't built on monuments or grand pronouncements, but on the enduring power of a harmonized whisper, a testament to the quiet triumph of the human spirit. Please subscribe for more inspiring stories of human triumph and galactic adventures. Check out our next video for another incredible journey.